story of Omni Goku, a saga devoid of Beerus, has been quite an interesting one, and in the previous parts we've seen how Universe 7 or even the multiverse as a whole faces an unprecedented predicament. The power of the Omni King has begun to reach maturity within Goku himself. The leader of the warriors of Universe 12, Zenith, has turned out to be the older brother of Zeno. Both his companions as well as Broly have made their way onto the scene as well. Vegeta, as the god of destruction of Universe 7, has more on his plate than Beerus ever had in his lifetime, it's looking like. Even the Grand Priest and Zeno are making their way here. Now, Omni Goku, Omega Vegeta, Zenith, and his companions, Broly, Whis, as well as the incoming arrival of the Grand Priest and Zeno, all stand at the center of Universe 7. It seems like it is quite literally impossible for things to ever go back to as they were before. Meanwhile, Piccolo and Gohan have summoned Porunga on New Namek to discuss the Old Testament of the Namekian Book of Legends. They've already used their first wish to translate the chapter on the Omni King and realized how Goku is supposed to bring about a new age of the multiverse. That would be where the previous part 7 of our What If ended. Definitely be sure to go check out the previous parts as well as the entire playlist to get better context so you can understand the entire story. It's been about 8 parts so far. As for what happened next, we'll be kickstarting the final arc in this long-running saga. Piccolo and Gohan are dumbfounded after hearing Porunga's explanation on the Omni King. But there was one thing they couldn't help but wonder, and that's how this isn't something Goku would ever desire himself. All he wants to do is to keep fighting guys that are stronger than him. And yeah, their concern was indeed correct. The whole thing about the power of the Omni King sounds like a curse inflicted from the multiverse. While the two of them were lost in thought, wondering about what it means for Goku going forward, Porunga was getting kinda tired of waiting. He asked them to hurry up and state their second wish. Piccolo was going to ask about what was happening with Goku now that Porunga had translated the chapter on the Omni King, but the translation of the scripture had pretty much also explained what was happening to him. So now, in just a couple of moments, Piccolo and Gohan have to decide what kind of wish might give them an edge in this situation. Meanwhile, back at the scene, Zenith, Katara, and Amarak are about to subjugate Omni Goku. Since the power hadn't matured yet and Goku himself hadn't regained his own consciousness, Zenith might be able to absorb it himself. What drives these warriors is still kind of shrouded in mystery, but by this point, it's obvious that it's more than just a mere thirst for this power. Just what exactly happened all those millions of years ago that led to these men embarking on such a path here? On the other side, Broly and Omni Goku are exchanging brutal blows like complete savages, all the while shrieking each other's names. They honestly look like they're having a pretty fun time over there, and Vegeta wonders if exchanging blows with the Saiyan whom Kakarot had instinctually known ever since he was born might snap some senses back into him, so he chooses not to disturb their duel, at least for now. So now at this grand stage, we have Broly and Goku who are duking it out on one hand, while Zenith and his fellow warriors are just kind of standing over there. They would have long since jumped in the battle between Broly and Goku if it weren't for Omega Vegeta standing in between both sides, whilst giving off stupendous ominous vibes in every single direction, ready for whatever. Guess I'll just take care of you lot before closing the matter with Kakarot. What do you say, brother of the Omni King? Vegeta states while standing in their way as an insurmountable wall. While this goes on, off in a different sector of Universe 7, Frieza kind of reminisces about the good old days when he used to reign supreme over the universe as an emperor, and somewhere along the way, those monkeys just began to get in his way and he's been since chasing after them all this time. At this rate, I'll never be the emperor of the universe again, he sadly murmurs to himself. He's tried to mimic the Ultra Instinct, but he knows he can't. It's not something that can simply be mimicked. In the end, even Platinum Frieza wasn't enough for him to regain his status as the one and only emperor of this universe. I'll be damned if I go out like this, Frieza screams and then flies off to parts unknown. That doesn't really sound too good, but I'm sure we'll see how this plays out in the next part. Going back to the scene, it's an epic showdown between Zenith and Omega Vegeta. I still don't understand how you somehow managed to exist and not exist at the same time, says Vegeta while dodging several of Zenith's blows. Well, that's the secret. You are pretty strong, aren't you, Yamoshi's descendant? Now, if only you were able to land blows on me, I'd be doomed. Zenith replies. You know, it's been bugging me how you keep mentioning Yamoshi. How do you know him? Even I, the Saiyan Prince, had never heard of this name until just a few years ago, says Vegeta. Ah, you are the curious one, aren't you? Zenith replies while landing a quick blow on Vegeta's gut. Well, stop screwing around and speak if you have something to say, Vegeta says, but he's still unable to land any solid blows on Zenith. In fact, no one has managed to deal him any damage ever since the clash between the Omni Kamehameha and the Omega Flash. Alright, I guess I can tell you. Now listen carefully, Yamoshi's descendant. What I'm about to tell you is a story from long ago. Back in the ancient times when the multiverse was in an era of constant warfare, Zenith states. You don't make sense. Didn't Yamoshi exist only 1,000 years ago? How was he supposed to be present in ancient times, Vegeta says. I think you've confused Yamoshi with someone else. What I'm talking about is a warrior whose existence itself was an anomaly, Zenith says, and then he starts sharing the story of Yamoshi. It happened long before Zeno became an Omni King. I was a warrior going from universe to universe in search of strong opponents. Having reached the absolute peak of my potential, someone stronger aside, there were hardly anyone who could even pose to be a good sparring partner for me. Though this is when I would come across a weak warrior named Yamoshi. He had a distinct glare. Even now I can't forget those eyes. Of course, as one would expect, he challenged me to a duel, but it barely took a punch or two before he was rendered incapable of moving anymore. So I would tell him to train and come back again in 1,000 years when he's finally strong enough to hold his own against someone like me. I see, so you had been associating me with a weakling, Vegeta intrudes, but Zenith continues on. No, not at all. At least listen to the entire story, he says. Even after suffering a humiliating defeat, the warrior known as Yamoshi didn't lose that glare. Without permission, he started following me on my travels. Whenever we came across a strong opponent, he'd be the first one to take them on. Of course, since Yamoshi didn't really stand a chance most of the time, he'd continually just kinda get his ass handed to him, but after a year and a half of him traveling with me, it was the 1,000th time that he challenged me. He had grown beyond reason, and I had never seen a potential on this level before. It was absolutely inconceivable. And that's when it happened. In the middle of our duel, he lashed out because I was going a bit too easy on him, I guess. I take offense and knock him unconscious with 2 heavy blows. Though right when I was about to leave him be and go take a nap myself, Yamoshi suddenly gets up and lets out a loud, unwavering roar. And then magically, his hair starts to turn golden, and his strength simply implodes out of proportion. But he had gone berserk and was simply just destroying things left and right. I still remember to this day, despite becoming so strong, that I was having a hard time finding a strong opponent. I had an even harder time keeping Yamoshi in check. It took a lot of effort before he calmed down, though he fell unconscious once again. It was only later that he finally opened up and told me about how most of his people were killed because of infighting, and sadly, it was an outside force that caused discourse within his race. Yamoshi wanted to return his proud warrior race to its former glory. However, a great tragedy resulted in the absolute extermination of his entire race. Okay, this Yamoshi you talk about is definitely not a Saiyan, because the Saiyan race is still alive and prosperous even in other universes, Vegeta interrupts him. No, I watched it happen right in front of me, Zenith replies. The transformation Yamoshi pulled off was almost exactly the same as that Broly guy the Omni King is fighting against. This timeline doesn't match up at all though, Vegeta states. What you speak of is an era that was millions of years ago. Plus, how are the Saiyans still alive if they were exterminated along with their entire universe? That makes no sense. The Yamoshi we know of is just a myth from thousands of years ago, Vegeta says. I see, Zenith replies. So you aren't yet familiar with the way this multiverse works. Alright, for my old friend's sake, I'll explain what I think might have happened. Remember how there used to be 18 universes, Zenith goes on? And 6 of them were completely erased out of existence, correct? Years would pass following that insane transformation of his, and together we continued to travel across the galaxies, and Yamoshi grew even stronger. At one point, he surpassed even the gods of destruction by outlashing his godly ki. I don't think Yamoshi ever got as strong as you guys here, but seeing his growth was always a delight to me, Zenith says. And during our 10,000th duel ever, I Zenith, lost to Yamoshi for the very first time. This was when he parted ways for a while and returned back to his home planet. It wasn't anything to fuss about, I was just gonna win the next time we met. Unfortunately, fate didn't allow that to happen. An unpredictable turn of events resulted in the total annihilation of his universe as well as 5 others. It happened only moments before Yamoshi's child was supposed to be born. Everything about this warrior race erased on the spot. Only I and my companions still remember Yamoshi. So what exactly are you guys, and who is this Yamoshi you speak of? Well, I have a hypothesis. The multiverse follows a cycle where an extinct race will eventually be reborn, even if it happens millions of years later. So the Saiyan race would be reborn, and coincidentally, or maybe even by fate, another distinguished warrior named Yamoshi appeared on the scene. Who knows, Yamoshi was supposed to have a son after all, so maybe it was fate. I mean, that's why I keep calling y'all Yamoshi's descendants. It's to instill the notion that Yamoshi's race survived and prospered. Also, have I mentioned how you guys look almost exactly like Yamoshi's Zenith finishes? But you 3 have displayed a level of strength that even I'm not sure if I'd win against, if I were to use conventional methods, that is. Hearing this story, Vegeta experiences a momentary pause. He had no idea that his race's history was this deep. But the moment Zenith finishes his story, he orders both Amarok and Karada to gang up on Vegeta together with him. They rob the Saiyan Prince of his moment of silence, and so Omega Vegeta simultaneously would land a punch on both Amarok and Karada with each of his fists. Feels nice to finally be able to hit someone, Vegeta expresses himself and pushes both of them back. He still had yet to even be able to hit Zenith once though. However, this momentary opening allows Zenith to pass straight through and reach Omni Goku. Omni Goku's maturity had come to a halt, or rather a breaking point, because of the mindless exchange between him and Broly. Zenith was going to use this opportunity to somehow acquire that power for himself, especially because the power is currently being sandwiched between the supernatural and Goku's own consciousness, which would probably make it a little bit easier to take from him. But just when Zenith was about to lay hands on Omni Goku, a bright ball of light emerges right in front of them all. Vegeta, Whis, Zenith, Kamura, Amarok, Broly, they're all perplexed. It's still much too soon for the Grand Priest and Zeno to be here. And they would be right, because the duo that landed on Earth before them all is none other than Piccolo and Gohan. But it was still weird because they obviously sensed the presence of the Grand Priest and Zeno somehow. However, even after Gohan and Piccolo had arrived, that ball of light still didn't disappear. And that itself may spell an ominous conclusion for this saga, because it was indeed the Grand Priest and Zeno. Piccolo and Gohan's teleportation just happened to coincide with their emergence as well. Zenith and his companions are dumbstruck. They've run out of time. They've been completely taken off guard because, all things considered, it should have taken 2 entire days for Zeno and the Grand Priest to reach the scene. They're about a whole day and a half too early here. Well, if it isn't Zenith, the Grand Priest exclaims before setting his eyes towards Omni Goku next. Omni Goku would sense the Grand Priest's glare. He would instantly stop trading blows with Broly and simply glares back. As for Vegeta, well, he would immediately go to confront the Grand Priest face to face and states, "Leave. This universe is my responsibility. I will take care of everything." The Grand Priest simply replies, "If you would like to avoid punishment at a later date, I would suggest that you back off. This situation is already far out of your control." Whis, who had been sidelined the entire battle, welcomes both the Zeno duo and his father. However, Vegeta refuses to back off. Omega Vegeta is the essence of his ultra ego taken to extreme heights. If he backs off now, he'll lose the very source of his strength. As if Vegeta's pride would allow for something like that to happen anyway. Amidst this conversation, somebody has lost their mind as a solid kick lands on the Grand Priest's shoulder, which hinders his footing slightly. It was from Omni Goku. Not only that, but it seems like Omni Goku has just lost it at this point, as he then proceeds to land massive punches on the Zeno duo, an offense of the highest tier in the multiverse, a cardinal sin to some, just blasphemous to others. He was about to land another one, but this is when Gohan would pop up right in front of his punch and tanks it to the fullest extent. This does catch Omni Goku off guard, but that's when Gohan would utter 3 words. "Father, wake up!" and that would be it. The boiling point has been breached. This was the final hinge Omni Goku needed before regaining his own consciousness. Just what the heck is going on here? Why are all you guys here? Says Goku after finally awakening from his deep slumber. But what might the consequences be now that both the Grand Priest and Zeno are here?